In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how you can create this emblem design using Inkscape. And this tutorial combines lessons from several tutorials that I've done so far this year, and this will be more of an advanced tutorial in which I won't be explaining every single click that I make. But if you are somewhat familiar with Inkscape, you shouldn't have too much of a problem following along. If you do get stuck along the way, just leave a comment below and I'll see what I can do to help you. Before we get started though, if you want to learn more about how Inkscape works, be sure to check out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 80 videos where I go over every tool and feature in the software, and I explain what it is and demonstrate how it works. Kind of like how I'll do in this lesson. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you need it. I'll have some information about that down below if you want to check that out, and now that that's out of the way, let's get started. So let me move this off the page, and the first thing I'm going to do is create some text. So I'll grab my text tool, and I'm going to write the text that I'll be working with. Let me try that again, but with caps. There we go. And I'm going to change this to a different font. So the font that I'm looking for is called Call of Ops. It's a font that I used in another tutorial earlier this year. I'll link that in the description below if you don't have a copy of that installed. And I want to put some spacing between these letters. First, let me make this a little larger. And then I'll go back to my text tool and I'm going to change the spacing to, I'm going to start out with 10 and see how that looks. Okay, a little more than that. We want some spacing between these letters because we're going to be putting an outline around them, and whenever we switch the color over from light text on a dark background, the spacing kind of visually looks tighter. So put a fair amount of space between the letters like I've done here. And I'm going to convert this to a path. And I'm going to come over here to the Nodes tool. And I'm going to go to Path and select Flatten. And then I want to select all the nodes and then click on the Make Corner Nodes. I want to make sure these are all corner nodes, so I'll click on that. And now I want to take just this node right here in the top right corner and then come over here and hold Shift and select this node right here as well so that we have those two nodes selected. And then I'm going to enable the transformation handles, and I'll hold the Shift key and just scale this out about that far. We want to point. Basically, we want to create a point at the corners of these letters. Not too far out. We don't want it going long like that because the longer you make it, the longer the outlines are going to stick out when we add them. So about that far looks pretty good. Let me turn off that setting now. And now what I will do is I will apply a path effect. So let me go to my path effects menu. And the path effect I'm looking for is envelope. So I'm going to type that in. Envelope deformation. I want to disable where it says enable left and right paths, and I want to bend the top side of the path, so I'll click on that, and I'll take this green line right in the center and bring that up about that far. And then I'll do the same thing to the bottom path, so I'll bend to the bottom path and I'll bring that up about that far. And then I'll finalize that by converting it to a path. And now I'm going to apply a perspective path effect. So let me type in perspective, and there that is. And I want to enable this setting right here that says mirror movements in vertical. And then I'll just take this node on the bottom right and pull that out, and then just adjust this until the text looks something like that. Let me adjust that a little more. Okay, and once it looks good, we can convert it to a path. And once again, I want to go to my Nodes tool. Let me flatten the path again. This is going to get rid of any double nodes that are in there. This happens sometimes with Inkscape. There's extra nodes in there. Flattening the path helps to get rid of a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I'm going to select all of these nodes again. And I want to make sure, once again, that these are all corner nodes. And now I'm going to make this white. And I'm going to hold the Shift key and click on the dark shade of blue down here to add a blue outline. And then I'll come into my Fill and Stroke menu under the Stroke Style tab. Where it says Order, I want to choose this option down here in the middle where it puts the stroke behind the fill. And I want a square join. And I'm going to make this a lot larger. Let me start off with 25 and see how that looks. I'm going to make it even larger, 35. Even larger, 40. Okay, so that right there is what we're going for. If you see any errors in yours, like you see here, this is because of a double node. There's two nodes here. So what I do is, with that node selected, I'll just press the delete key to get rid of it. And then just click around to see if there's any other double nodes in the area. So, okay, that looks pretty good. And And once that's finished, let me zoom out. Let me convert this to a path. I'll go to Path, Stroke to Path. And then I'll go to Object, Ungroup. And I'm going to take just this path right here. I'm going to straighten that out. I'm going to grab my Nodes tool and get rid of those nodes right there. There we go. And now I'm going to make a duplicate of this. I'm going to press Control-D to make a duplicate. Hold Control, move this down, and then scale this down about that far. And let me lower that beneath everything else. And I'm going to select both of these and go to Extensions, Generate from Path, and choose Extrude Between Two Paths. And I want to choose the Polygons option, and then I will click Apply. Close out of that. And now I want to make sure I have everything selected here. So select that object along with the extruded objects that were just generated, and let me ungroup them. Object Ungroup. And then I'll unify them all together by going to Path, Union. Okay, and that right there is what we're going for. So now I'm going to take the letter or the text, and I'm going to apply a red outline to it. So I'll hold my Shift key and click on the shade red. And I'm going to make this larger. This is going to be an outline going around the outside of the text. Let me try a little smaller. Okay, that looks pretty good. And it looks like, once again, we have double nodes in here. So let me grab my Nodes tool and click on the node and press Delete. And there we go. And I'm going to adjust the color of this. I'm going to use something different. I'm going to use a duller shade, and I'll make this darker, and I'll change the shade of blue to something else. And for the text, I'm going to convert the stroke to a path. And then I'll ungroup that. And then I'm going to select just this red outline right here. And I'm going to use a different shade for this as well. Maybe not red, but a little bit of pink in there as well. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to create the text going at the bottom. So to do that, let me grab my text tool. And once again, with the caps lock on, I'm going to write baseball. And the text I'm using, once again, same font. Let me scale that down. Grab my text tool, letter T on the keyboard, and the spacing between that, I'm going to change that to maybe 8. Maybe a little more. I'll go with 10. Okay, that's good. And I'm going to put a rectangle around that. So I'll press R to grab my rectangle tool, and I'll put a rectangle going around that text. Let me get rid of that outline. I'm going to hold Shift, click the red X, lower that, and center these up. So I'm going to open up my Align and Distribute menu, make sure I have those centered. And let me make the text white, and I'll convert that to a path. And then I want to take this object, or the rectangle, convert that to a path as well. And I want to give this an outline that's the same color of blue over here. So I'll grab my dropper tool, D on the keyboard, hold Shift, click on that color to apply it as an outline. And now I'll come back in here to my stroke style settings. Once again, we want to make sure we have this option enabled in the order. And I'm going to make this larger. I'm going to go with 12, see how that looks. Still bigger. Let me try 15. Maybe even bigger. 20 should do it, so let me go with that. There we go. And now I'm going to duplicate that. Command D or Control D. And I'm just going to bring this in with the Nodes tool. I'll select these nodes, add a new node between the two of them, and then take just this node and hold Control and bring that in. And let me lower this beneath the other ribbon. Command D to duplicate, or Control D. I'm going to press H to flip it horizontally. Let me lower this down. Bring that over there. And let me select both of these and unify them together. And then center it relative to the larger rectangle. Okay, so now I'm going to take this rectangle and go to Stroke to Path, and then ungroup it. And I'll do the same thing with these objects. Stroke to Path, and then ungroup it. And now I will enable snapping. I'm going to grab my pen tool, snap to this corner, and then snap to this corner, and then bring this through here. Grab my selection tool and this object right there, and do a path difference Or you know what, let me try that again. It looks like I don't have it selected. There we go. Path difference. There we go. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to grab my pen tool, letter B on the keyboard, snap to these corners, back to the starting point, S to grab the selection tool, and then hold shift and click on that object and go to path difference. And there we go. Okay, so let me turn off snapping now. I'm going to select all of these objects, group them together with Command G or Control G, and put this up here. And let me center this relative to the other object. And now I'm going to apply the same bend and perspective that I applied to the original text. So let me go back to my Path Effects menu, and I'm going to look for Envelope. I'm going to disable left and right paths, bend to the top path, take the green line and bend that up. And then the same thing with the bottom path, bend that up as well. And I may have to adjust that a little more so that it's more consistent. There we go. And I'm going to convert that to a path. And now I'll do the same thing with the perspective. Choose the perspective path effect, mirror movements in the vertical, turn that on, and then just take this bottom right node and pull that out until it looks consistent with the all-star text. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'll convert that to a path to finalize that. There we go. And now I'm going to create the shape going along the outside of these objects. So let me come down here. I'm going to grab the Stars and Polygons tool. I'm going to choose Polygon. I want to use 6 sides and then hold Control and Shift and click and drag up so that it creates a polygon or a hexagon where the corners are going up and down like that. And let me convert that to a path. And let me make this the same shade of blue that this is. And let me remove the stroke. And now I'm going to go to my nodes tool. I'm going to select these 3 nodes up here, turn on the transformation handles, and let me scale that out. I'm going to hold Control and just scale that out. And I'm going to apply the corners LPE. I'm going to take this node right there and then just round that all the way in like that. And then we can convert that to a path by clicking this button up here. And now let me duplicate this. So I'm going to right click and go to duplicate, or you could press Control D. And I want to make the duplicate copy the same shade of red that I used up here. And now I'm going to apply the offset path effect. And I'll grab the nodes tool, and then I'll just bring that in about that far. Convert that to a path to finalize it. And now I'm going to duplicate that. Control D, and make that the same color of blue that we had before. And now with the selection tool, I can hold Shift and just scale this in like that. And then I can scale this up just a little bit. And now select both of those and do a path difference. So now we have a little accent piece for the inside of that shape. And now I can take both of these. Let me group them together temporarily. Control G to duplicate. And I'm going to place this behind the text and scale it up as needed. Let me make that a little bigger. I'm going to bring that in a little bit. I want to make sure I have it centered. There we go. And I'll even move the text around a little bit. Make that bigger. I'll make this bigger. And now I'm just adjusting the proportions until it looks good. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks right there. Let me ungroup it. And I'm going to ungroup this item down here as well. Instead of using the menu, you could just hit Control, Shift, and G, or Command, Shift, and G if you're on Mac. And I'm going to put a star down here. So let me go back to my Stars and Polygons tool. I'm going to choose the star option this time. 5 corners, and for the spoke ratio, I'm using 0.375. And then I'll just click and drag to create my star. And let me place this over here and make this white. And I will scale this down and center it relative to the object. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I just have to bring my baseball object in here. I already have it up here. I should have it copied to my clipboard. I'm just going to press Control V to paste that in there, and there it is. I'll link to this in the description of the video as well if you want to download a copy of this. I demonstrated how to make this in a previous tutorial that I made a couple of months ago. So let me center this, and then I will lower this down until it's beneath the blue part of that text. Okay, and now I'm going to put a little bit of a reflection effect in the text here. If you notice what I did over here with this gradient going halfway through the text, I'm going to recreate that. So let me take the text object and duplicate it, and I'm going to make it the same shade of light blue that this is right here. And I want to apply the offset path effect. Let me grab my nodes tool and bring that in a little bit. I want to create about that much of an offset. Convert that to a path. And then I'm going to grab the ellipse tool and create an ellipse going halfway through that text object that we just created. Let me make this a different color so I can see it better against the other object. And I will bring the opacity of this down. And I want to make sure I have this centered. And let me zoom in a little bit. And I can bring this up or down to change the curvature, to adjust the curvature of that ellipse to make it somewhat consistent with the edge of the text here, or the edge of that emblem. And I just want to place this right about there. And then I will select both of them and do a path intersection. And now I can grab my gradient tool, just press the letter G on the keyboard, and then just click and drag down like this, and then hold Control so it brings it down in a straight line. And that right there is pretty close to what I'm looking for. Okay, so for the final step, I will place red outlines going around everything. If you notice here in the original design, I have a pretty heavy red outline going around everything. It helps tie everything all together and give it a uniform look. So let me take this shape, I'm going to duplicate it, and make that the same shade of red, and then I will apply a stroke to that, and let me send that to the bottom, and I want to make the stroke bigger, so let me make that, see how 15 looks, maybe a little bigger than that, 20, okay, that looks good. If you notice here, we have these little notches sticking out. That's usually because there's two nodes there, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that extra node, and I notice the same thing over here. Or it's not there anymore, but there should be. Yeah, there it is. I'm going to delete that other node in there. It's a common problem with this, with these shapes that we make. And okay, so I want to make a mental note of the weight that I used for this stroke because I want to use that same weight for the other object. So this was a 20-point stroke, and now that I've made a note of that, let me convert that to a path. And then I'll take this object and do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate it, make it that shade of red, apply a stroke in that shade of red, send it to the bottom, and this already has 20 being used, so I'm good to go there. Path, stroke to path, and then I'll do the same thing over here. Let me take this object, duplicate it, make that red, give it a red stroke, and then send it to the bottom, and I'm going to apply a 20 pixel stroke. Path, stroke to path. And for the baseball, I'm just going to, instead of creating a stroke, it's already shaped as a circle, so I'm just going to create a circle and place it directly over it. So let me make a red circle, let me get rid of the stroke, bring the opacity up, and then I want to center it vertically and horizontally. And then I'll send that to the bottom, and then I could just hold Control and Shift and scale this down, and then I can eyeball it until it's about the same weight as the rest of the outlines. Maybe a little more than that. And we're finished. If you found this lesson useful, then consider checking out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 60 videos where I go over all of the tools and features in Inkscape, and I explain what they are and demonstrate how they work. Kind of like how I did in this video. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you want. And best of all, there's no monthly membership fees. You just pay $17 one time and you're in for life. I'll have some information about that down below if you want to check that out. As always, thanks for watching.